So hi and welcome. My name is Brian Crane. So we're here from Chorus One, and we're organizing a discussion today to speak with Martin and Henrik. So Martin and Henrik have been involved in the blockchain space or in the Cosmos ecosystem for a long time. I remember when I think when I first got involved in Cosmos, that was over 2 years ago, and I kind of looking around the community, they were already there. And so they have a company in Denmark called Block Finance, and Block Finance has kind of two different parts, but we'll speak about that in a second with them. One is Validator Network, so they're running one of the validators on the Cosmos Hub, and another one's called eMoney, where they're focusing on issuing fiat crypto-backed or fiat-backed cryptocurrencies, and there's a governance proposal they've now submitted. So today we specifically want to speak about that governance proposal, so that people in the Cosmos community can understand a little bit what's going on there, and the direction that they have in mind for the Cosmos Hub to take. So thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks.
So maybe we can start there. Do you guys mind sharing a little bit? How did you originally get involved in crypto and in Cosmos, and how did that kind of lead up to Block Finance?
Yeah, so I guess I can start. So so I'm Martin. I have a background. Basically, I'm a developer by trade. I co-founded a company called Spamfighter in Denmark many years ago when anti-spam was a thing. I then transitioned into algorithmic trading, so Forex, metals as well. And then I kind of stumbled onto crypto a few years back, and at that time, Tendermint and Cosmos really caught my attention, because I saw the potential of having, let's say, decentralized applications with finality, scalability. That was something quite new and interesting for me. So I got involved in the Cosmos fundraiser at that time. Yeah, so that's how I got into it.
Yeah, my name is Henrik. I'm also a developer of background. I've been working as a consultant for 15 years, primarily in the financial industry here in Copenhagen. So I actually don't have much prior involvement in crypto. I always taken an interest in it, but from a more academic point of view of seeing where it would go. So this is my first real venture into actually working with it. Yeah.
Cool. Well, and tell us a little bit about eMoney and the idea of like crypto or like fiat-backed cryptocurrency. So what does that look like?
So what kind of led us to think about the eMoney business was the properties of Cosmos, basically. So we see Cosmos with IBC as kind of interconnected economy where people can build services or zones that can communicate value. So we think that having the ability to transfer something that is relatively stable price-wise is sensible, and for kind of to have mass adoption with this new technology, we need currencies that people know already and that they trust. For instance, if my mom needs to pay in Bitcoin for a service, she will have no idea what she's paying for. Basically, it's like traveling abroad and having no idea what the local currency is worth. So we see a big value in having local fiat currencies, not just the dollar, but basically as many currencies as we can support available in the network. So that's our idea.
And so was the idea originally that there would be a zone for issuing these fiat-backed cryptocurrencies, or like how did you see that play out in the Cosmos ecosystem?
Yeah, so our initial expectation was that Cosmos would launch with IBC, We've been working on basically our own zone built on top of Tendermint, so just using APCI to issue tokens and also to run a decentralized exchange inside the zone. But as we're seeing now, IBC is kind of the scope of IBC has changed, I think, compared to the original vision that was just transfers. So it seems like it will be hopefully something better, but at least something more. So that has kind of led to us thinking that perhaps we should try to use the Cosmos Hub in a broader sense than just IBC, because without IBC, the hub is not really that exciting. Basically, just moving atoms around. So that is basically why we have put forward the proposal.
So let's speak about the proposal in a little bit, but I'm curious to dive in into the question of why should there be these fiat tokens issued on the hub? Now, okay, let's say at the moment there's just actually at the moment you can't even move the atoms around, right? But let's say a week from now, hopefully you'll be able to move the atoms around. So at least we'll have that. So we'll have staking, governance, and atom transfer. And then let's say you add fiat tokens to that on the hub. What's the cool new thing that becomes possible?
So for if we're looking just at fiat, we think this proposal also has other implications than just fiat currencies. But if we look at just fiat, actually doing fiat payments by itself is a very nice product. So on the Cosmos Hub now, the fees are quite low, so you can do a payment once payments transfers are enabled. You'll be able to do a payment that's settled immediately with I think it's $0.3 with the current atom prices. So it's actually a quite efficient way to do payments, and we see one of the use cases, not of Cosmos Hub specifically, but of, let's say, of the entire ecosystem, is actually providing what we call a network account. So not a bank account, but a network account. So people will actually be able to save up and have a store of value on chain, independent of their existing banking relationships or non-existing banking relationships, basically.
Yeah, if I could add a little bit to that. I mean, our hope is to basically be a value plugin for other applications, for maybe mobile apps or whatever ideas people can come up with that would usually be their own zone or their own smart contract. So then they don't have to worry about the money part. We'll be supplying that. They will find a use case for it, and that's what we hope will eventually emerge. We are in talks with people who have a need for stable value distribution. So we have some pretty interesting cases lined up for that. And yeah, since we are not we're not planning to build the whole stack ourselves, we're not necessarily involved in the transaction. Once the tokens are issued, they're distributed without our involvement. So it's a pretty interesting value proposition for people who do need to add some kind of real currency to their applications. We see that as pretty powerful.
Let's speak a little bit about the actual mechanics of now your specific crypto tokens or fiat-backed crypto tokens. So my understanding is, right, first of all, they would be fully backed. So there's going to be some bank account that has €1 million if there are €1 million tokens on the chain. And then you guys would have some third parties that would kind of provide the attestation and proof of that. Is that correct?
Yeah, so we actually, I'll just name drop our website here. So we have some of these details on e-money.com. But basically, yes, you're right. It's fully collateralized by fiat. So that could be either deposits in a bank, or it could be government bonds. And we we have Ernst & Young on board as our auditor, and they have agreed to do proof of funds. We'll start with quarterly proof of funds, but maybe if there's a demand for more frequent proof of funds, we'll do that. Yeah. What we think is kind of interesting with our approach to fiat-backed currencies is that they are actually interest-bearing. So we will be able to support negative interest currencies as well. So as you might know, the euro is, I think it's like a negative 0.5 now. Didn't check recently, but there are a number of currencies that are actually negative interest, and then really hard to expose on blockchain, basically. Yeah.
So basically that would mean like somebody sends me some euro tokens, and then my balance the blockchain would kind of decrease my balance like very, very slowly to charge a negative interest rate. Would it work like that?
No, not exactly, but we are kind of waiting to reveal how it will work until we launch. So that's still kind of proprietary, but no, it's not. It doesn't really rely on the blockchain side. No.
Okay. And so the other question I'm very curious here is about the kind of the regulatory side. Will there be like a need for KYC, or like if I have a token, can I transfer it to anybody? Will it be sort of a permissionless system?
Yeah. So once you're in basically once you have a token inside Cosmos, yeah, you're free to move it around. So KYC and ML processes are, let's say, on the edge of the network. So if you're doing at the gateway, basically. So that would be either when you go through us, or if you go through a third-party exchange, then they would need to do KYC and ML. Of course, if there are businesses on the network that accept large payments, then of course they also need to be compliant. So we see it as let's say a cash alternative to whoever accept. Yeah. So if you're building a service on the network and you accept fiat tokens, then of course, if it's over a certain amount, you need to be compliant in the same way that any other business would need to be compliant.
Yeah. Okay, no, that's very useful. And now let's speak about the specific proposal. So I mean, you set a little bit the context, right? That at the moment the Cosmos Hub is extremely limited in functionality. IBC is sort of far away. So wouldn't it be good to actually allow what you're talking about, so the issuance of fiat-backed cryptocurrencies on the hub? Can you describe what the actual proposal is that you guys have submitted on the hub and that the vote is going on right now?
Yeah. So let me just basically. First of all, it's for fungible tokens, so not the non-fungible tokens. As you mentioned, it's kind of it's intended to gauge interests or kind of measure support in the community to actually implement this. We didn't really want to kind of go through the hassle of providing a specific implementation if there's no interest or no support for it. So we wanted to do it in two steps. First, to see if there's actually wide or broad support for this kind of functionality, and then provide a specific implementation afterwards. And I think let's say the implementation details, if the proposal is accepted, we will kind of ping pong with the community, I guess. So I think the actual implementation is, once you have a mandate basically to implement or to come up with an implementation, then it's also easier to actually iron it out. So yeah, does that make sense?
It's also going to be an interesting litmus test to see how detailed proposals need to be. It's probably not a good idea to do architectural design inside a proposal, because then people can discuss that endlessly. So in our opinion, but I mean, that's something that we need to see how it works out. The proposal is actually meant as a mandate to say go in that general direction, and then at some point when some developers, a development team has been found, they have some kind of mandate to implement it in a reasonable way, hopefully without further votes or too much debate regarding the exact implementation. But I mean, we'll see. It's as far as we see it, it's the first sort of non-trivial vote in a way. Like the first vote was about the block time that was registered in Genesis, as far as I remember, and that went through pretty smoothly. It was a good job. And then the enablement of transfers, which is kind of a no-brainer. But yeah, so we will we'll see how how it works out.
Yeah, no, I think the point you bring up is very interesting, because we basically have this governance process, and then we're seeing how the function inside the governance process. And already with the transfer proposal, right, we've seen that there's now a proposal, and then there's going to be a second proposal with the hash, right, of this. And now here we have in a way, this goes even a step back further and says like, oh, is this general direction something that we should look at? And then if yes, I mean, I could actually see this being almost a three-step thing, right? Where you say like, okay, do we want to have the issuance of fungible tokens on the hub? Yes, no. Okay, could be yes. Let's say then there's some work on a specification, like, okay, is this the way it should work? And then maybe the vote on that, and maybe there's a third one on, okay, this is the actual code that's getting implemented.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
I think at least our thinking so far has been that we will provide an implementation, but of course we'll, take community feedback into account during the implementation phase, because otherwise it's going to be a lot of voting. But yeah.
But it was actually a challenge writing the proposal, striking the right balance, because my initial thought was I would make it an incredibly simple proposal, which was just, do we want fungible tokens issuance on the hub? Yes, no. I mean, no involvement with governance process or anything. But then we decided we should add some substance to it to make sure it's not just a general mood measurement. So, but it was definitely a balance, trying to keep too many low-level details out of it that might just pollute the discussion. I hope we stroke the right balance, but it's we'll see.
Yeah, I think as Henrik mentioned, I mean, it is kind of, I mean, there is definitely some implementations details in there, because we're actually intentionally trying to repurpose as much of the code base as we can by using the existing governance system. So I think the let's say, it would seem that at least the changes required to the code base would be fairly low impact. I would not expect this to be like thousands of lines of code that needs to be added or tested. By utilizing the governance mechanism, I think we are greatly simplifying the work, the implementation work.
Right, so let's actually speak about this briefly, right? Because the proposal that you guys made specifically, so let me just read this here. So you guys proposed that there's going to be a new governance proposal transaction, and there's a new type of proposal, and this proposal would be, okay, the proposal to add a token. And then there would be a governance vote, just like today we have a governance vote on should there be fungible token. There would be a governance vote on should this token be added to the Cosmos Hub, and like this token could be, you know, Euro tokens. And then you also talk about this is now, I guess, a bit technical, that there should be an issuance module as part of the SDK, and they would be kind of first-class citizens. And transferable via IBC. And then you also specify that a proposal would include an issuer address, preferably a multi-sig. and then that issuer address could mint and destroy tokens. And then you also specify that you think there should be an ability to kind of issue a set of tokens at once. So I think there's a few things here that are interesting to unpack. First of all, we have the idea that the addition of new token goes through governance. Now, Felix and our team looked this up before, but apparently there's 180,000 ERC20 tokens. So the great thing of Ethereum is this open system. Anybody can add a new token, and you have just a tremendous amount of innovation. Here we're going to have governance as a bottleneck. How do you guys think about it? Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, what we're hoping is for this to be a sort of a temporary solution, a stopgap solution, until IBC comes along and enables the full 180,000 tokens possibilities. So it is in order to have some kind of some level of hygiene with what comes onto the Cosmos Hub, because we also do appreciate that it is a vital piece of infrastructure and it shouldn't be burdened with too much random things. So it was our judgment that permissionless was not the way to go for issuance on the Cosmos Hub. Then we'll see if it's the way to go with IBC later when that arrives.
I also think there's a point to the fact that the hub is actually, since there will be IBC at some point, hopefully, that the hub will be the source of these tokens. So it is still a bit unclear to me if IBC will be permissioned or unpermissioned, but somehow at least the zones that are communicating through IBC will need to somehow trust each other. So I think it makes sense for the Cosmos Hub, if it is the issuer of tokens, that it is actually the stakeholders of the Cosmos Hub that has kind of vetted the tokens. I mean, at least in my mind, that makes sense. I think the job of having, let's say, a totally unrestricted issuance can be done in a separate zone as soon as we have IBC. But I think for the hub itself, we should have some kind of token hygiene, if you can call it that.
So the other thing that stands out to me about this proposal is the idea that you have a particular issuer address and they can, add tokens and subtract tokens. Now that makes sense to me for your use case, right? Because you have, let's say fiat in a bank account, and then if there are more people want the token, you're gonna add more fiat, issue more tokens. Maybe at some point the demand goes down, you reduce the token supply. But I'm sure for other tokens, you would want to have maybe a fixed supply and nobody can ever change it, or maybe there's some sort of inflation rate. I mean, there's so many permutations. Is this the right approach? Should there be some kind of level of programmability or maybe set of features that one can add?
I mean, I would say that the fixed amounts is kind of a subcase for the inflationary version. I mean, if you want a fixed amount, what you can do is go get the proposal done, have the key, issue the tokens, and then burn the key. Then you have a fixed set of tokens.
How can you burn the key? You can't prove that you burned the key.
No, I mean, you would have to have some kind of ceremony set up that to make it reasonable to people that you did it. But yeah, I completely agree. It's like maybe if we have multisig, it could be 5-10 different parties that people trust, and requiring all of them to sign before more tokens are added. I mean, I would argue that it's a subcase with a fixed amount. But I mean, then we kind of rotate back to the whole mandate discussion. Maybe you could be specifying some attributes for the token when when you make the governance proposal, if it's complex enough, say, yeah, this is a fixed amount, or yeah, this is a adjustable amount. That could be a flag you set when you do the governance proposal. Yeah, there are several opportunities, several possibilities. We'll see how it pans out.
Yeah, I mean, another thing that came to my mind, which could be another approach to take, is that, you know, let's say I want to issue a token at the Cosmos Hub, then I have to pay, maybe I have to pay 5,000 atoms or some, you know, substantial amount to do that, but then it's kind of permissionless. And, you know, the 5,000 atoms go to, I don't know, community pool, or they're just sort of distributed among, I guess it could just be a transaction fee.
Yeah, we talked a bit about this as well. I think one of the concerns here is also one that was brought up by Saki on several occasions, I think. But basically is that if you allow like, let's say, first come first serve registration of names, then you can end up in like some odd cases where people, like kind of like domain names, they do like cyber squatting basically. So we think it's reasonable, at least for the hub, to have some kind of sanity check on new tokens, something that actually goes through governance. If it's just a matter of paying enough, then some of the, you know, those kind of systems can quite easily be sabotaged, even if you need to pay something. But still, it must be affordable enough that people will actually use it. So it's somewhere in between. I think we kind of try to strike the right balance here, but of course it's it's always open for discussion. But our thinking is that some level of sanity checking is sensible, and we already have a mechanism for that through governance. So why not use it? Yeah.
I mean, another viewpoint is that you actually maybe don't want to make it expensive to get on, to have a project get on the hub. I mean, 20,000 atoms could be a lot, but maybe we have some worthwhile project and we would love to have them issue on the hub, and they will get the deposit back as soon as the proposal passes. So yeah, we did a lot of back and forth on it, and we feel like the governance process is definitely the most sane at this moment in time.
So we spoke a little bit about the fiat token, and I think, okay, the payments use case kind of makes sense to me. Now, what are some other tokens that you think would be cool and that, you know, could be issued on the hub, you know, maybe in the short term or also a little bit in the longer term?
Yes, so we talked a bit about also using the system as a way to bootstrap new projects for Cosmos. So, for instance, if somebody wants to launch a new service or zone, and they want to do a fundraiser or ICO or whatever the name is today, and they need to do a token distribution, this would be quite a suitable system to do it, actually. So they would first put forth a proposal, explain the project, get their token listed, and then they can do the fundraiser and do the token distribution inside the hub. Then they can move on to actually implement the zone, connect it, and then finally move the tokens over into their own service. So we don't see it exclusively as something related to fiat or payments. It could also be used to bootstrap projects for the hub, or basically for the Cosmos ecosystem. That would be the right way to put it. Yeah.
Right. So in the short term, it could be like somebody says, okay, I want like some zone for a particular game. They make a governance proposal, and then they do a fundraising campaign. And of course, at least in the short term, before this IBC, one would then be able to accept, I guess, potentially fiat token if those are added then, and atoms. and then pay out this new zone token, and then at a later point with IBC, maybe one moves the token to that new zone. I don't know if there would need to be some sort of process probably for that, right? Where you maybe get rid of the issuer on the Cosmos hub, and then this new zone becomes the source zone, or I don't exactly know how that would work, but like something like that.
Yeah, that's our thinking. And also, I mean, it's not even the case of IBC not being here already. I think it would make sense for many projects that are not really ready to launch their own zone. They don't have the community, the validators to actually do it. So they would maybe do a fundraiser first with their own token inside the hub, and then they would build a community, develop the software, and then launch their zone. So I think it makes sense in that way.
Yeah, I mean, go ahead.
You could also argue that, I mean, if all you want to do is have your application issue a fungible token of some kind, it is quite a lot of work to either gather a validator set or set up your own trusted validator set internally with a lot of software. I mean, it lowers the barrier to entry for hopefully interesting projects to get on the platform, but also doesn't allow Joe Sixpack and his coin on. So,
yeah, one thing that also stands out to me about this idea of having a crowdfunding mechanism on the hub, I mean, you still have this mechanism of you have to go through governance, right, to get your token kind of approved for the crowdfunding campaign. And then, of course, that means on the one hand, there's like a cost of that, even if it's a cost in terms of attention, right? As an Atom holder, like if there's going to be 100 governance proposals every week, the system starts to break down, right? So this has to be limited. And so it could be interesting, I guess, in that if you really want the attention of the Cosmos community, you kind of have to sell your project a little bit at the Cosmos community to get it through that, and then be able to do this token issuance. And I guess you could imagine that maybe a proposal would include that some percentage of the token supply would get paid into maybe the community pool as a sort of as a condition for getting listed for one of these crowdfunding campaigns. But I think that's an interesting idea, like what could be done that on a sort of like
Yeah, I agree. I think I mean I'm personally I'm not a big fan of this of unrestricted token issuance. I just saw, I just received, I think, got 10 Shack coins airdropped into my Ether address the other day. I have no idea what that project is, and I mean, a lot of stuff keeps pouring in, and I have no idea what it is. So I think it's meaningful somehow to actually communicate a bit with the community and try to get listed and try to kind of sell the product in that way.
Yeah. So too many. We've seen too many tokens on Ethereum. No, this has to stop this madness. No, let's reduce the number of tokens.
Well, yeah. At least we think it's kind of a good middle ground for Cosmos right now for the hub. But I think we'll probably see zones that allows unlimited listing or issuance at some point, I'm sure.
So let's say this vote now passes, and so far, I mean, not that much has been voted in terms of the percentage. I think it's around, like, as we record this, probably by the time actually we put this out, it's going to be more, but right now it's around 18% of the staked atoms that have voted. But let's say this passes, what do you think the timeline and process is going to be for adding this token issuance functionality to the hub?
So as soon as we see like a clear signal, if we see a clear tendency towards a yes, even before the voting period ends, I think it would make sense to investigate further let's say the funding source for the development. That could be the Interchain Foundation, could be the community pool, could also be crowdfunding, basically. I think the community pool would be a suitable source for funding this. And as I understand it, we did a bit of preliminary check with the All in Bits or Tendermint team, and they are quite busy doing other stuff. So we'll probably do a kind of find third-party developers to do it. Could be the Certus One guys. Henrik has offered to look into it. So I think that would be the first step. I wouldn't, to be honest, I wouldn't really expect the implementation to take a lot of time. It would more be the process around it, to have a testnet launched, to reach some kind of consensus initially on the implementation part, then do testing, testnet, and then the voting. So I don't see it as a very, prolonged process, to be honest. And from my perspective, the implementation is not very. It doesn't seem very challenging to me, to be honest. It seems like it would be using the existing governance system and the existing accounting infrastructure. It doesn't seem like a major undertaking.
So maybe it could be something that's actually on the hub running within 3 months or something like that.
Yeah, I would say, yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And then let's say this goes through. What does your timeline look like in terms of when will you guys be able to issue actual fiat tokens on Cosmos?
So our plan is late this summer. So yeah, we still have a few quirks to work on it, but hopefully that'll be solved, and we should be able to launch end of the summer. Yeah.
Cool. Well, anything else you guys want to briefly address?
Henrik, briefly address.
No, I'm very excited to see where this goes, and I hope we hit the right balance on the proposal. I would say this could sort of act as a template as to how future proposals will be handled, also with regards to funding and development and testnets and putting it on mainnet. It's going to be very interesting to see how this plays out, because it's all new ground right now, as far as I see.
Yeah, that's a good point. And let's say people want to get involved in this, maybe discuss it with you guys, or have ideas or criticisms or particular ways of implementation. What's the place where this, where does this take place, and how can they kind of contribute to that conversation?
Well, we're pretty active on Telegram. I think especially Martin is very easy to find. Just pretend you want to set up a validator and he will be there. So I think if people get in touch with us, we'll definitely take notes and pass them on to whatever happens next, and make sure that voices get heard. But as like we talked about, we can't be sure what the process will be. Like, will there be more votes, governance votes, or will someone be able to create a design that just gets accepted by the community? On how detailed should these governance proposals actually be? We'll see how it plays out, how much, how people will receive it. But I mean, for starters, they should try and talk to me and Martin, and then once we know who will, if it passes, once we know who will develop it, we should also put them in touch with each other.
I think also the forum would be a nice place to collect feedback. So we already have a forum. Unfortunately, we didn't put it into the proposal, but on forum.cosmos.network there is there's a thread for this. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll link in the notes to this. I'll link to the forum page. I'll link to proposal. I'll link to where the governance vote's going on, and so people can get involved. So yeah, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having us. Thanks.
Thanks.